Hi everyone, in this video I'm going to do a review of a pretty old school lens here. This is the 20mm AIS f2.8 lens. Nobody in the world knows what AIS stands for, and barely anybody owns this lens. This is like a special super duper lens, old school lens. Now the cool thing about this lens is that it's got lots of funky colours on it. On the actual barrel of it, you've got your aperture ring, which is good, which as you can see at f2.8, you can see a big hole going on there, and then it can stop all the way down to f22, I think it is. Yes, that's right. And it's got funky colours, just for telling you which aperture you're on, and this is what this lens is about. I don't think anyone's really going to be using this lens anymore for photography. I don't believe that the quality that you're getting through this glass is quite good enough for the high-end digital cameras that you get nowadays. Trying to do wide-angle lenses in the past was very, very difficult for camera lens manufacturers, and trying to get an f2.8 was really quite even more difficult on top of the wide angle. And a 20mm, again, you've got to remember this is in the time of film. This is a film lens. 20mm was pretty much super ultra wide. I think this is considered an ultra wide lens, which in comparison to today you can get a 14mm from Nikon or a 16 from Canon. So we've got wider, and they're both f2.8, so there's one as well. So this is old school, and it's pretty beautifully made, is what I'm trying to say here. It's like the actual mechanics of the zoom, what am I on about? The focus just feel quality. It feels solid. It's metal construction. It says made in Japan. Yes, there is a sign saying they're made in Japan, which some people consider that to be a better thing than saying made in China or made in Taiwan, which you get in some other lenses. However, I don't think that's really much of an issue. But what you can do is you can definitely feel that this is just a quality piece of manufacturing. It really feels good. So what I would say this lens is good for is HD videos. So it can easily pump through 2 megapixels worth of image quality going on here. However, the aperture, it's a crazy thing going on. So when you're talking about actual camera lenses, you'll hear people say the widest aperture, an f2.8, an f4, an f5.6, all that kind of stuff. However, what you've also got is a thing called your transmission rate. So even though it's at f2.8, it may not be f2.8's equivalent amount of light really getting through. The f2.8 is really just a mathematical term for talking about the diameter of the actual lens, and the aperture divided by the length of the actual lens. So 20mm by 2.8 is something. But in terms of the actual amount of light that gets through, you've got your transmission rate. You'll see some kind of cinema lenses say T1.8, and that might be a lens that lets in 1.8, an f1.8 level of light coming through. So don't think that your images are going to be bright with this lens as it would be with other lenses saying f2.8, because this one at 2.8 gets a bit funky. There's some serious vignetting going on. However, in the center, it seems to get brighter, which is a bizarre thing. What I'll do is I'll stick it. We want to see the full-on aperture effect. I'll stick it on the Nikon. So if we stick it onto the Nikon, it's a funny. It then becomes such a tiny little lens on such a big boy camera. Also, for some reason, this isn't quite, because it's fully manual. There's no electronics going to the actual camera itself. There's just no connectors there apart from a bit that roughly tells you where the aperture is. So when I stick this on, I'm going to stick it to f2.8. My camera says it's actually f4. So there's a bit of a what's going on here. So this is really where live view comes in very, very handy. Okay, so if I point this over, I'll put it into live view. If I point this over at my other Canon, the Canon 550D, and if I zoom in and focus so that it is spot on Canon, I'll just take a photo there. So there, the information I've got is has 1,250th of a second. Now if I change the aperture, so it goes down from f2.8. First stop is f4. Just double check that the focus still spot on. And then we'll go for one more down to f5.6. And next one at f8. So although this is set at aperture mode and it should be changing the shutter speed so it's the equivalent of the same brightness coming into the actual camera, you can see it definitely gets brighter when going from f2.8 down to f8 there, because it's obviously affected the shutter speed. However, there's just something not quite going right here. So what this lens really is for doing videos with. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to swap lenses over with you, and I'll show you how close we can get to stuff and other things. Oh, well, actually, so before I even go there, that's the cool thing about this awesome AIS lens. Having the filter ring, or not the filter, the aperture ring on there means that with a very cheap adapter, I'll put a link down to this down below, for about £10–15, you can put this full frame ultra wide 20mm Nikon lens onto any Canon camera as well. So you can put it on the 550D. However, more of a challenge is on the 5D Mark II. So I'm going to swap you over and you can see what life is like through 20mm here. So roughly standing in the same place as I was before, this is the view that you get on a full frame Canon 5D Mark II with the Nikon 20mm AIS f2.8. So as you can see, it's ultra wide. So if we take the camera off the actual tripod and we go do some shooting of Mr. Hippo here, so the closest we can get down to is saying this can go down to 25 centimeters away from the object. So in terms of Mr. Hippo, you model for us there at f2.8, nice and bright. That is as close as we can get. So we can go blurry, or oh, it's just so smooth how well it can go to blurry. So that's fairly close, and it's still pretty wide angle going on there. Okay, so here what we'll do is I'll do a couple of shots just of Mr. Hippo, and we'll do it at different apertures, and I'll set the Canon 5D Mark II to aperture priority. So here we're with Mr. Hippo. Let's zoom in, so that's about as close as we can get. That's at f2.8. Let's look at the vignetting up around the corners. You can see there's quite a bit of chromatic aberration going on here as well. Down a little bit, let the camera adjust. Down a little bit more. Down to f8, 11, f16, f22. So if we look, the camera's obviously having to do a lot of ISO noise, as you can see it all over here. And as you can see, that's nice and sharp there. However, bring it back, whoa, look at the brightness difference going on there. What I'll do now is I'll take this off, I'll put it back onto the Nikon, and we'll do a couple of photo comparisons as well, both of the center and of the edges of the images. Okay, so here we are looking at the photos taken with the Nikon D700 at a fairly high ISO, 4500. And this was it, as you can see at the top right, it says f4, and it's giving me 1,000th of a second. So that's wrong. It should be saying f2.8. And then if we look at the next photo, it's saying f8. That's also wrong. It should be f5, 5.6. So from 2.8 to 5.6 is 2 stops. So that means a quarter the speed. So this effectively should be saying 1 divided by 250. So 250. So if you go from 1,000th of a second to 500th of a second to 250th of a second, but as you can see, it's gone even slower than that. And the next shot is from other angles. Okay, so that's the 2 different angles which is shot at, and you can see, yeah, it's just kind of totally done different things going on here. So it's not giving reliable information to the camera. But let's look at what we got in its sharpness and stuff. What I do like here is that you're even getting a shallow depth of field at a 20mm lens. So the fabric in between Mr. Hippo's eyes is nice and sharp, and but the front of his nose nice and blurry. So that's quite nice. But again, the main thing here is about just how smooth the blur is in the background. The other thing is there's a serious amount of vignetting going on, and also a little bit of barrel distortion as well. If we just like flick from one to the other, okay, what we'll do is I'll just make this one a little bit darker, so we're roughly at the same exposure. Yeah, so that's roughly the same, but you can see there's a huge erasure taken away of the vignetting going on in the corner, especially if you look at up in the top left up here. So let's see, we look there, and we go to the next image. Look at how much that goes. So if you think that the exposure in total is possibly been kind of equalized, but the certainly around the edges, it's totally different now. So if we go from photo to photo, photo to photo, it certainly also seems like the center part of the f2.8 gets brighter. So if you look close, definitely a brighter center going on here, and just a whole bunch of things just kind of totally going different between each shot. And then here we've got him in the corner, and I'm pretty happy with the sharpness that you get at f2.8 in the corner. That is the middle corner, whether it be what it'd be like up here. But this is a full frame camera, and that was it at it says f8, it was actually f5.6. So I'm pretty happy with that. If we go to here, don't know what happened. Just it did it all wrong there. But otherwise, I would say actually the sharpness isn't too bad. For certainly the central line all the way to the edges, pretty good. Quite surprised with that actually. So yeah, if you can't deal with the odd vignetting that you get going on, or the fact that it's not as super sharp as some of the modern day lenses, using this for video works, certainly if you want to use it on Nikon cameras or Canon cameras, simple adapter. It's a very small, doesn't take up too much space, very light lens with fantastic focusing feel. I do not know how they make that feel quite as beautiful as that feels. Only other camera nerds would understand that feeling. It is kind of a case of, if you've only ever had kind of kit lenses or cheapo lenses, once you feel this, you instantly go, oh, that's what it's meant to feel like. It's the difference between driving a a Morris Minor and a Porsche 911. I think is just, oh, so good. I have to apologise, that's just so nerdy, it's unreal. But some of you may totally be like, I'm with you there, Dom, I understand. It's worth all the money just for that effect. And so yeah, use it for video on both smaller sensor cameras or bigger sensor cameras, or for photos. Only if you've really got live view and using the kind of zoom function in the live view to make sure the focus is spot on beforehand. Yeah, quality lens. I think you can only get this second hand, and I've seen the prices vary from £900 down to around about £350. So I don't know if there's a specific value of these, or it just depends on how much some of them have been battered. I got this secondhand in Japan. I was just in Japan, I thought, and I saw it, felt it, and I thought, I don't care. I don't even care if 20mm isn't the widest angle that I can get. I just want that lens. It was so nice, so portable, so great for, like, if you're doing street photography as well, it's quite subtle if you don't have such a big ass camera with it. So maybe a street camera lens may be pretty good. You can get pretty close up to people, and with it being 20mm, you can pretty much just set it at 1 meter and stick it at f5.6, and you can just snap away without really having to think too much for street photos. However, if you're doing like more like fashion and portraits, you want to be not using this lens, I would say. But yeah, so have a check for this lens online, and even if it's just a case of just having a feel of what it's like. So nerdy, it's unreal, but brilliant.